sad not to be there in person, just due to I had originally intended to, and due to the nature of my game, I ended up being starting to freak out a little bit about it, and deciding that an international flight probably wasn't in keeping with the whole kind of ethos of what I was doing. So thank you for listening to me speak remotely. I was going to give this talk from the rooftop of one of the buildings that I work in at OCAD University in Toronto. It's an iconic building that's sometimes called the tabletop. It looks like a square with a bunch of pencils holding it up. The oh, okay, that hopefully that did not sound for folks in there like it sounded for me. Anyway, I went up there yesterday to create a backup video just to make sure that it was going to happen. And then I'm kind of chickened out a little bit because the Wi-Fi is non-existent up there, as you'll sort of see in the video overall. So I'm going to start with like a little 10-minute video presentation that I took yesterday, and then talk a little bit more about the game that I wanted to show folks and get you to hopefully play a little bit of. So I will, hopefully this works. I'm going to start a video. The audio in it is somewhat compromised by a large fan, but it should be audible. Hopefully this all turns out okay. Okay, 10 minutes of me talking way too shrilly over a fan on a rooftop. Go.
Poremba. I'm Academy University's top in Toronto, Ontario. Brought you up here to show you our solar game server. The solar game server is housed inside this cool secret greenhouse, where we have our power set, including a secret giant battery, and the server. Running a server often gives you two big problems. One of them is that it is very easy to exceed your data quota, and eventually data becomes very expensive. The use of data as a resource, however, actually kind of works a little bit in with the spirit of some of the projects that I'm working on. So I'm kind of okay with things on that level. One of the other issues is that because the data is very costly and very precious, the server is vulnerable to external attacks, which will take it down quite quickly, or even friendly attacks of enthusiastic people going to see the server or to play things off of it. So as a functioning game server, it's challenging. And one of the things that I want to experiment with in this session is simply putting a game up on it, actually sharing it, seeing how quickly it stays up before it goes down. Now, I will say that I have a renewable data plan on it, and anything that gets chewed up in any given month gets renewed for the next month, and things will come back. People will just have to be patient, and they will have to wait. So one of the reasons why the server is set up this way is just very pragmatically that because we are up on the top of the roof, and the roof is very thick, we don't get a wireless signal up here, so I had to be a little bit creative in trying to figure out how to connect the server. This is also, because we're an urban campus, one of the few places where we can even hope to get a little bit of sunshine. Not a ton today, but honestly, given the last 4 or 5 months, I'll take it. The server is called Solar, and currently it is hosting one game, a game that was specifically designed to run off of it called Moss. Now, Moss was a game that I started developing during the Renewable Art Game Residency, which was a prototype initiative that Kara Stone and I ran a couple of years ago that was aimed at encouraging art game creators to consider the role of sustainability and renewable energy in the game development process. So as opposed to being focused on something that was thematically related to climate, the whole idea behind the initiative was to consider the role of sustainability in development practice. Starting with the Renewable Art Game Residency, I started developing the game using exclusively solar power. So I have a set of EcoFlow solar panels running into a battery that I use to charge my laptop. When that power runs out, then I stop working on the game. Now, obviously, there's a little bit of flexibility and kind of leeway there because I also use my laptop for other sorts of things. But I have tried, as a matter of principle, to try to ensure that the power that I was using to create the game was actually coming from the sun. Challenging, because I live in Toronto, Ontario, and this guy hasn't shown up since last November. One of the main things that I learned from the Renewable Art Game Residency was how profoundly bad I was at creating works that were resource light. As a kind of prototype project extending out of it, I honed in on creating a game that was a database game surrounding photography that used video in order to communicate a broader narrative, with the goal of putting this onto a solar server, which I then ended up tethering to data. So, and I have also managed to tie it explicitly into a weather API, which ensured that it needed data connectivity in order to function overall. So, I'm not good at what I do. In Moss, you play an investigator who goes in search of a researcher who has been investigating moss in a mysterious context in the middle of the wilderness. As part of the game, you have to rely on technology, which itself is being quote-unquote solar powered, at least a representation of solar power. The solar power representation relies on the weather API, which is tethered to the location of the solar server. So currently, whenever you play the game, wherever you play the game, you are playing it from wherever this solar server happens to be, which, as I said, is the roof of OCAD University in Toronto, Ontario, but could be anywhere in the world. Moss is designed to play slow because it uses renewable energy, and that energy is tethered to real-world energy contexts. You need to be a little bit strategic about how you use the energy once it has been built up, and then also mindful that you will likely have to wait until that energy recharges after it has been used. So it's a multi-day experience. Those days don't need to be consecutive, but you are likely going to watch your energy flow level within the game, and then take some time waiting for it to recharge overall. So in a way, playing the game has a little bit of a mirror to the process of creating the game itself. So because of the technical constraints, I'm not entirely sure whether or not Moss will be viable on the solar server. I do have an alternate platform for it, which is a solar arcade cabinet, which is currently sitting in my office. So that might end up being its home in the end. I've learned a lot from the development of it, which will inform some perhaps more game design more attuned to delivery on my particular solar server. The version which I am making available is actually a little bit of a hybrid. I am going to be taking the images and the video, and I'm going to be bringing them onto my my main server and then the game logic itself is going to be hosted on the Solar server. So I am admitting that what you will have access to is going to be a little bit of a cheat, but it also will potentially mean that the game is up a little bit longer and gives people an opportunity to see a little bit more of it, at least until I get a better sense of traffic and managing traffic overall. It's really just a theory that this entire experiment is going to bring the server down, and I could be wrong, in which case the entire thing could potentially migrate onto the server in the first place. If you have seen the game, you'll know that as part of keeping manageable small size, and also because I love a kind of hyper compressed manner aesthetic, the video itself and the images themselves on in the game are designed to be very low resolution, very small scale. But at a certain point, if you're going to create a game that is about photographs of moss, and the images that you show have to look a little bit like moss and a little bit like photographs, and then you kind of hit your natural constraint there.
Okay. Oh, all right. Sorry, the feedback, I hear myself like really, really loud in the background. So this, hopefully you can see a QR code. This is the QR code that I'm not sure if it'll work on a giant screen, but I can give you a URL to Moss as it is currently sitting up on the Solar server. So the server is glimmer.solar, and the game is at /capital M small o 2 5s. So it's the spelling tends to vary because I created it using non-traditional characters. So essentially this is a little bit of a tale of making basically the most difficult decision for no reason at every stage of the game development process, and still having it kind of work out in an interesting way overall. So a couple of things that I just want to kind of talk a little bit about the game itself and how it works. So first of all, I want to just acknowledge for everybody that this is a really early version of this game, even though I started working on it 2 years ago. The natural way in which the working time contributes to it, as well as trying to be really firm about only working using solar power and kind of being mindful of that constraint overall has extended the process. What it typically is, but sounds like kind of initially, I think when we went into it, it sounded like it would be a really kind of leisurely process of just working on things when the the sun was out. Practically speaking, it means work, 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 work. Okay, I'm out of energy, and then like 2 weeks of rain for some arbitrary reason until my motivation sinks down, and then the sun will pop out again while I'm busy doing something else. So, but that process itself has been interesting. It has been fun, and some of it has kind of fed into the way that I've been thinking about the design of the game and the mechanics of the game overall. Anyway, I've been trying to get better at showing earlier versions of work, which is why it's here and why you're seeing it today, and also because as hopefully I could express in the video, the it's kind of in a bit of a testing phase right now where I want to see where I want to bring it onto the Solar server, and I want to see how that impacts what the Solar server can do and before it goes down. So yeah, as of this morning, it was up and it was functioning. A couple of really quick things about the game overall. So the design of it is meant to not be overly prescriptive. It's an interactive narrative game that has different kinds of little details and things that are discoverable within it. It does have an extensive system that does essentially react to different kind of decisions and choices that a player makes within the game. Some of that is transparent, and some of that is less transparent and feeds into the overall game experience and win conditions. But it was important for me not to overprescribe what people choose, and in part that was kind of going into the spirit of creating work and working within a climate context where it might be less important to have explicit rewards for and kind of to see back the results of action and inaction, and instead to kind of live in in terms of like a more value to live in a way that's more values honest in terms of sustainability and resources and renewability. So that kind of spirit has sort of fed into the design of it. The game is, this is maybe a spoiler, the game is not about moss, which is kind of funny because every time I talk to somebody about it, they embark on a long tirade about moss and how amazing moss is. And I acknowledge moss is great. That's just not what the game is necessarily about. The game is about pattern interpretation. So as you go through the game, what you understand as being what the moss images are for and how they were previously interpreted changes as you step through, and those are essentially kind of they form the tiers or the levels of the game. So it's been fun kind of working with different in the games they're kind of framed as like theories, different modes of interpretation for the same data that's being kind of categorized or understood in different sorts of ways. The last thing, just in terms of like mechanics for the game overall, was that it was important for me not to necessarily use the sun or solar energy as being this like all-encompassing positive, which doesn't necessarily, first of all, kind of align with the general way in which it kind of reflects the development process, but also doesn't really reflect moss, which isn't adverse to sun necessarily, but also has to be really cautious about it because that often leads to moisture loss. So in the game mechanics, there are several things in there that are aimed at kind of respecting shade as much as sun. The game's wind condition actually requires several days of shade time, which works great because, as I said, I have been struggling in the past year to kind of advance work on the game, given that it's been just really, really cloudy in Toronto and really rainy and miserable for quite a long time. So yeah, and finally, it's a game where you get to look at almost 100 pictures of moss, which means that it was a game that allowed me to go into the forest and take almost 100 pictures of moss, which really is its own reward. So yeah, that's thank you for volunteering to take a look at it. I should note it's actually not playable. It is a P5JS. It has a P5JS base, so it's sadly not super compatible with things that aren't computers and laptops. But yeah, thank you for listening to me babble about it for a little while.